With the usually hot spring housing market just around the corner, the big question now is whether the slowdown in sales is finally turning around. The latest numbers show housing sales in Canada in February were down 40% from 2022 for the same month, but they are also up very slightly from January. Joining us now with his thoughts is Jim Dunn, the director of the Canadian Housing Evidence Collaborative. Jim, good morning.
Thanks.
Let's talk about this, shall we? Because it's one of the numbers that we continue to look at very closely from what was a red-hot market last year. So why are, from what you're looking at, sales down so significantly? Some of the factors.
Well, right now, interest rates are driving a lot of that because it's raising the cost of borrowing. So it's costing people the same amount of money to get the house, but they're paying more of it in mortgage costs. And so that's driving prices down, and for the people who really need to sell.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting to too, when we talk about the interest rates, we talk about housing supply.
Yep.
A big issue right across the country right now. Cities in the country working to increase the amount of homes available to Canada's growing population. So if home prices are down so much, is there less incentive? And because they're maybe not selling as quickly, less incentive for builders to be building new homes?
Yeah, I think we see that builders are sitting on the sidelines a bit because there is a lot of risk in the environment. It's unpredictable, and people are unwilling to pay, so for sure.
And when we get into it, because, and it's almost qualifying this, that yes, it's down 40%.
Yep.
But also we talk about that from January to February, we're up almost 3% when it comes to sales. So month over month yearly is the huge number, but from one month to the next, it's almost 3% as we talk about. So what does that mean for the market right now?
That's a normal thing in the spring that you see things start to ramp up. So I don't think we should extrapolate from that trend. I think the longer term trend is what's going to happen with interest rates. And until interest rates start to come down, then we're going to see that things are going to be pretty soft. But who knows when that's going to happen? Essentially, they're trying to control inflation. And until we get inflation under control, those interest rates are going to stay high.
And maybe an indication, too, that we may not be done with some of the interest rate hikes. I want to bring up some numbers here, too, because the same report that we were just talking about, 40%, home prices on average in Canada down 18.9% from last year. So we talk about buying and selling, but what about the rental market and rental affordability? Because we've seen that shoot through the roof too.
Yeah, rental affordability is definitely taking a hit right now. And partly that's because people are not exiting renting into ownership. So normally we'd expect a certain number of households to exit renting into home ownership. And so what happened between 2016 and 2021 is the home ownership rate went down from 68% to 66%. That represents over 100,000 households that didn't leave renting, putting extra pressure on the rental market. And we used to have a lot of rental construction in the 1960s and 70s. Most of the rental that you see actually was built then, and we've seen a resurgence of that, but it's just not enough to meet that demand.
Because the demand is it's wild to see what's happening too with all the demand across, especially for rentals right now.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about earlier about those numbers over the course. What do you expect for the spring as we get, if we have another interest rate hike, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but if possibly that happens and those interest rates still trying to tame inflation, what do you expect for the spring heading into the summer?
I think it's going to be more of the same that we've seen, that people are going to be reluctant to sell. So many people bought in at very high prices, and they're reluctant to sell at a time when they'd have to actually sell at a lower price. So that's going to actually create things being a little bit stuck. And so I think until we see interest rates move downward, and we're probably a good year away from that, I would think, we're probably not going to see much change in the sales market. In rental, it's also going to remain tight. And hopefully what we can see is more and more movement in the nonprofit side of things so that we can see acquisition of existing buildings and be able to keep rents in check that way.
Appreciate that. Director of the Canadian Housing Evidence Collaborative, Professor Jim Dunn. Thank you for this.
Terrific. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.